Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. As always, on the fourth Wednesday of the month, I'm joined by Mark LaBarr, conservation biologist for Audubon, Vermont. And today we're going to take a trip with Mark to someplace nice and warm. But before we do that, I know you have a photograph you want to show us.
I do. This is an image that I got from Arlen and Marie Batchelder of up in Walden. And they took a picture of a great egret out in their field, and this is a great shot. You know, we see more and more of those, but oftentimes you see large egrets like this more towards Lake Champlain, you know, in the sandbar area and stuff like that. So this was up in Walden, and the egret, of course, is the namesake bird for Audubon, the National Audubon Society, so it was great to see a picture of that, so thanks to them.
So now we're off to Hawaii.
Yeah, so another trip. I was really fortunate this year to be able to go to Kauai, which is the island it's the furthest west island, and participate in the Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Project. This is a project that works to protect and enhance the populations of species that are only found on the island of Kauai, so endemic species that are only found there. So they were looking for somebody that could handle birds, and I have my bird banding license, and that would volunteer their time, so I got to go and visit with them and see some really cool birds.
And we should mention, too, that this wasn't the tropical getaway that you would expect.
No, you know, and everybody says, oh, you went to Hawaii, oh, you went to Hawaii. But most of the work that they do is at about 4,000, 4,500 feet, so fairly high up. And it's a pretty chilly place up there, and rainy. You know, it gets some of the highest rainfall on the planet. So we were looking at, you know, 40s when we woke up, 50s, rain. We had a couple of nice days, but I did get to the beach for a little bit when I was in between shifts, but when we were actually doing the work, I wore my long johns the entire time.
Okay, I feel better.
So basically where we're talking about is where there's a high plateau on Kauai called the Alakai Swamp. And this plateau, you drive part of the way up, and it took us about 7 to 8 hours to backpack into the site, to this forest site.
Oh my goodness.
It's very rugged. There are trails there, but some of it is not trails. This is a view from on our way up to the top of that plateau, and you can see, you know, the drainages that run down into the bottomlands in Hawaii. That, you know, the forest. I did a couple of days out, and this is what the forest looks like.
Goodness.
And if you look at all those green things there, they're like sponges. You know, it's so wet up there that you touch them and everything is wet. So that's what we were walking through, in part to get to some of the places that we were looking at. And I was fortunate enough to go up on my second trip with Brendan Tyler. These are two folks from that work for the Recovery Project, and we hiked in. Again, young folks that I was trying, and I did pretty well, desperately to keep up with as we moved through this forest environment.
Good for you. So what local birds did you see?
So the big birds, the focal species are these endemic birds, and there's 3 big ones that they really focus on. And I'm going to work on this. I had to work on it the entire time. These are Hawaiian names, and so I'll do my pronunciations the best I can. The first one is the Kauai creeper, or the akikikiki. Okay, and this is a small brown honey creeper. It feeds, like our creepers here, picking insects and things off of the bark. Its population has declined rapidly, and so it's a species that is now critically endangered. It's only, again, found on Kauai, and the project is working to better understand this bird and hopefully increase those population levels in the swamp. The next bird is the akeke. And this is an interesting bird because, again, this is a bird that is up there in these high elevations. It nests very high in the tree, so it's very difficult to find information about. But this bird's bill is crossed, much like our crossbills here in in North America. And that allows it to open up the buds of various trees out there and get at the seeds. So that's a species, again, those two species are, they nest up in the canopy, tough to see, tough to get at, and so they're working really hard to protect them because it's the only place we have them left. And the last bird is the Kauai small thrush, or the puaiohi. And I started calling it. Took me a while to figure out how to pronounce that, so I called it the pea bird. And this is a youngster, but this is an actual thrush. There's only 2 thrush species left in the Hawaiian Islands, and this one's endemic to Kauai. This one, unlike the first 2, nests along these deep stream banks and ravines that drain out of this very lush forest and nests up in the banks there. You know, one of the funny things is we, here in the East, sometimes if you get lost or something, you can oftentimes follow a stream down and you can make it to another major stream. And in Hawaii, they said, don't do that because you might end up on a 100-foot cliff and waterfall, and all that kind of stuff. So
it's dangerous.
It was pretty good. It was challenging. When the first trip that I took out was all by GPS and by compass. And we had some maps, but again, with that density, you couldn't really see where you were. So we were really dependent on that stuff, but it was very cool.
What other birds did you see?
So there's a number of other birds that are found there that we worked with. The anakihihi, which is a bird which is Kauai. It's a subspecies of a bird that's found on some of the other islands. Again, it's a honey creeper, so it's got that big curved bill there and a little black behind the bill. So this is a bird that we would see most. All these birds sound alike. So in the East, when we do work and we try to sample them, we can often differentiate sounds and songs. It's really difficult to do that in the Alakai Swamp. The other one, and maybe one of my favorite ones, is the aniani owl. Okay, kind of looks like that first one.
Right.
But this is a little bit smaller, yellower, flitting around the forest. Those long bills allow them to get nectar out of a lot of the trees there. And it was just saying the name was, we'd often say, you get an Annie, but just saying Annie, Annie, owl just was always fun to have that roll off your lips. And then another bird, which was really cool because it was one that often came into camp, was the Kauai elapio. And this is actually a flycatcher. And it would flit around and they would come in really close. They're really puffy. Interestingly enough, there weren't a diverse number of bird species up there. That were limited to these endemics that were there. You go down to lower elevations and you get all the introduced species. But up here, it was, these were the birds you see, and that was a great one that would come right up into camp, and you could watch it flitting around and feeding and all that stuff.
So did you put up nets to catch?
Yeah, and I'll get to that in a second. So the last bird that we saw, and probably the most populous one, was the Ana Pene. I'm going to say that wrong, and so everybody in Hawaii, if they see this, can laugh at me. But this is another honey creeper here, and this is a bird that we saw the most, and when we were banding, we caught the most. Again, with that down curved bill for feeding on, a lot of the flowers that are up there.
Did you come across any non-native birds?
Yeah, we did, and the one that we saw the most was a bird. Again, a lot of the introduced species are lower elevation, but some of them do penetrate these higher elevation forests, and one of those was the Japanese white-eye. And a really good-looking bird, and we caught a number of these, but you can see it has that really distinctive eye line there, and it certainly got up with a couple of other species into the canopy, into that upper elevation forest.
So what kind of trees are we talking about that these birds are
So probably
living in?
The big one is the ohia, and this is the kind of the folks that have seen pictures of some of these birds, the classic ones. This is what the ohia is. It's got this flower, and it's a great source of nectar. And you know what? I think I missed a picture, and I'm wondering if we can go back. We'll see. But there's another bird which is really cool and kind of highlights how the ohia is, and that's the eevi, or the eewi. It's a V, it's a W, and that is a bird that has a really long bill. Maybe we can grab that one at some point in time and throw it up there. But these birds, these honey creepers, take of it. There it is.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is a really cool one. And you can see that massive bill that's used for getting in the ohia trees and getting into the nectars down at the bottom. So that was one of the exciting birds for folks to catch.
So we were talking about some of the work that you did.
Right. So interestingly enough, this is a remote place. There's things. This is our camp that we stayed at for 10 days when we were there. There were 9 of us that were there. 4 of us packed into the tent, and the rest of them we would set up things. Rained a lot when we were there. So this is a remote camp, and primarily what we were doing at that point was banding birds. This is the banding station. Again, Tyler and Bryn there putting bands on birds. We put color bands on them so folks could go out and actually track the birds by seeing these color combinations and record which ones they were. And a lot of this gave us information on what the birds were doing, their behaviors, where they were nesting. We also took blood sampling. Here's a picture of me with Evie in hand. The blood allows us, avian malaria is a big problem here as far as a threat, because it kills the birds.
Right.
A lot of these birds used to nest and be found at lower elevations. But the one thing that's keeping the avian malaria from really getting started is this cold weather situation that's up here. So we would do blood testing on these birds as well. And those big 3 that I started out with, those were the focus for a lot of the graduate work that was done there as well.
And so what else did you do besides the banding?
So I said, that these birds are critically endangered. The EEV is now is on the threatened list. Its populations have dropped, and there are a number of different causes. The avian malaria is a big one. Mosquitoes were not native to the Hawaiian Islands, and as the introduced birds came in, this avian malaria spread, and so we lost a lot of these birds at lower elevation. Another big one, and this was right at the entrance to camp, are feral pigs and goats. So these are, here's our kind of warning to the pigs out there. Those are 2 pig skulls. These are animals that were brought over, and the pigs go in, they route up all the vegetation. They distribute exotic vegetation as well. The goats do the same thing, and so very detrimental to the birds. And what they've done, amazingly enough, is they've built this fence around the swamp.
Really?
So it's a big 10-foot, 12-foot tall fence. You can kind of see the bottom end of it here, that is meant to keep these mammals out. And so they built it around the swamp, and there's certain gates that you have to go through, and just amazing what they've done, but a great job as far as keeping some of these mammals out. The other big one that's a problem is rats. Again, another introduced mammal. Hawaii didn't have any mammals other than bats. We had 1 bat fly through our camp one night.
And that's a trap.
So it's a rat trap. So there's a series, a grid system out there, and this is a humane way of actually killing the rats and removing. They'll get in and they'll eat the native birds, they'll eat the eggs, they'll eat the incubating adults. So there's a real concerted effort. So we spent 1 day just going out and making sure these traps were functional.
And I know you have another couple of photos that you wanted to show us.
Yeah, so they're doing a bunch of work. They've worked with mainland colleges on captive breeding in order to bring birds like the puaiohi back and release. They're now doing radio tracking. They're trying to get more information on the nests, and in order to do that, they have to literally fly in by helicopter ladders, rig up this very intense rigging system just to get up into the tops of these trees to get a look at the nests.
That wasn't part of your job.
No, I didn't do that, and unfortunately I didn't get a helicopter ride either.
Too bad.
Next time. And then the last great thing about it is they do have a lot of graduate students. We were there with a bunch of folks from the University of Hawaii over in Hilo on the Big Island. As you can see, we're dressed for the weather there, as it was wet and damp, and this is 3 of the students that they got helicopter rides, but that came and spent the 10 days up there, or 6 or 7 days with us, helping us out on the project.
Well, great. Thanks for taking us along on the ride. Hopefully next time it'll be a little warmer when you go.
That's okay if it wasn't, because there were some really cool birds, and I felt really, it was really nice to be able to help and support the project.
That's wonderful. Well, if you have a bird-related question, you can contact Mark. You can write to him at Audubon, Vermont, 255 Sherman Hollow Road in Huntington. The zip code is 05462. You can also email your questions to Mark. His email address is mlabarr@audubon.org. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.